Hey, good afternoon. Um, I'm here with uh, two very important guests, and we just want to have a conversation about some of the politics that have been occurring here lately in our city and state and in the nation. The other night we had the president was in town, and we also had the governor giving his budget request. And we know that Milwaukee and Wisconsin were very pertinent in making sure that the governor is in place now with votes, and also uh, this city county was very responsible for turning Wisconsin blue. But we still have folks who really don't show an interest in our local politics, and we're not really uh, being urgently energized to participate in this thing we call democracy. And I just want to get some ideas from some of two very qualified guests about how we could work to change that and how they felt about the visit of the president and the governor's address the other day. So I'd like to start out with Pastor Lanier. Pastor, I want to just ask you a couple of questions. First of all,
Mhm.
what do we have to do to really get people involved in and creating an energy for civic engagement? And before that, I'd like you to tell me what you thought about the Biden visit and our governor's budget address.
Thank you, Minister Lewis. Appreciate you and also the opportunity to be with Colleen Foley, my colleague in the law. I think to jump right into your question about getting people engaged, it's critically important for us to be able to draw the connection between our individual actions and our collective power. I know we're going to get into the details in a minute about Governor Everett's address and also President Biden's address. But one of the things that jumped out at me as I reviewed them both was how critically important it is for people to be in the room and at the table with their agendas, because what you heard from both Governor Everett and President Biden was an articulation of agendas that had been bubbled up and have pushed up from people that advocate. And so to answer your first question, I think our challenge as a part of the community, as part of leadership, is identifying how we can show people who don't know, but who desire to know, how their individual actions coming together collectively can represent power, and how people can get their agendas represented in rooms of power, but that it requires action. It requires some mobilized, organized action and sustained action over time. So that's actually, it's a great first question, because that's what I thought about when I looked at both presentations. Is okay, here's a set of agendas that have been presented, what's not here and what needs to be done to get it here.
Thank you. Ms. Foley, you're very important here today because we're going to be facing lots of obstacles for voting coming up in the very recent future. And I was watching some news uh, videos shows, and one of the things people talked about is all the uh, statutes and laws that are looking to be changed, just to suppress the vote for especially people of color. Can you talk about that a bit, or is that something um, that you have seen for yourself?
Yeah, the Legal Aid Society, of course, is a public interest law firm. So we to date, we haven't gotten involved in any litigation about voting, but it's certainly something that we pay close attention to, and that, of course, makes a big difference for people's voices in this city and all over the country. And it's been incredibly disheartening, to say the least, about the voter suppression that we've all witnessed, and all the nonsense about the presidential election and so-called voter corruption, which is a fantasy. But yeah, I mean, the wonderful thing is that there was big voter turnout for the presidential election, and that bodes well. And I just think it's so critical to making social change in the city and in this country. And of course, our young people are a critical component of that. I have 3 daughters who are in their 20s, and you know, they're our future, and so the get out the vote effort here and all over the country. You know, look what happened with Georgia. It's a game changer, and it allows us to help set policy about what really matters in this country. So,
when you say it's a game changer, Ms. Foley, what exactly do you mean by that? Could you elaborate on game changer?
Sure. I mean, it helps to you know, who we have in office matters, and the sort of policies that they support matters. You know, I'm of course, you know, we are a law firm, and the redistricting issue is very troubling for everyone, and it has gone through the court system without the kind of success we had hoped for. So, you know, nonetheless, putting people in office who are listening to the public at large instead of special interests will help us all in terms of, for instance, you know, affordable housing and who gets heard and what governments do with public funding and et cetera. It's just who's in a position of power and who do they listen to and who do they represent. Well, it makes a difference.
Thank you. You know, I was just aghast at the attempt to suppress our votes, and how many people don't really understand that, yeah, your vote is so important. You know, you have people saying it doesn't matter, your vote doesn't count, all those things. And then I look on the other side of the aisle, and you know, and I see folks really trying to make sure that you don't vote, and none of it jives. It doesn't make sense. Why would you think your vote doesn't count when so many people are trying to make sure you can vote? Pastor Lanier, can you talk about that very briefly? Can you talk about the importance of us voting, sticking together? You know, we're trying to create a voting block, as a matter of fact, so that we can vote during these times when there's low voter turnout.
Yeah.
And people aren't hearing us. What do you think is the issue there?
Well, I think the context is important, and maybe even the definition. You know, it's easy to get frustrated and disengaged with the voting process. It is sometimes hard to see how my individual vote can make a difference, especially if I don't see change happening in policy or practice in the city or the state, wherever I may be. A definition of politics that I think helps bring people closer to wanting to act. You know, one definition of politics calls it the distribution of scarce resources.
Yeah.
The distribution of scarce resources. So we have a limited number of resources that are available, and somebody's going to decide how those resources are distributed. Maybe said another way, envision being a kid at the dinner table, and there's a limited amount of food on the table. Chicken, pizza, whatever it is, you want to be at that table when people are talking about how the food is distributed. You may not get everything that you want, but if you're not at the table, you're probably not going to get anything. So that's one way for people to think about it. The second thing, historically, is Black History Month. We just have seen what happened on January 6th, which was horrid and perverse at the U.S. Capitol. And that energy is all about the vote. The thing that they tried to take from us most, and the thing that evoked the most violence, other than this silly narrative about trying to get white women. More so than that was the vote. They have been calculating, manipulating, sophisticated, and cunning from the beginning of time when Black folks have been in the U.S. after the Civil War, after emancipation. Literal violence broke out. If they couldn't do violence, they would use schemes like poll taxes. And so there's a long history, unbroken, of trying to deny the vote to people, and people of color in particular. And I think if we knew that history, that people are trying to get in your pocket and take your vote, that you might be more aware that this is not casual. It's all very intentional.
Very intentional. I just want to remind everyone we're here with Colleen Foley, Executive Director of Legal Aid Society, and my good friend, Pastor Walter Lanier, the pastor, the leader, and the Micah organization, religious leaders leader there, and he's pastor of Progressive Missionary Baptist Church, and we're just having a conversation about politics today because we just believe that somehow we have to get to our community, and we have to understand together that it is important that we work together. And I wanted to ask Ms. Foley, a question about, how, through the courts, what can we do? What should we look forward to doing to fight for our rights to vote? The Voting Rights Act of 1965 has still not been settled yet, and all these things are in the air. Do you know what that does to a people? It really makes us feel like 3/5 of a man or a woman. And what can we do about making sure that we keep our right to vote and that people can't keep stepping all over it, Ms. Foley? Is there anything you could suggest or really, add to that thought process?
Yeah, I think we've seen more than ever how critical community activism is, and what Stacey Abrams did in Georgia got us, granted a razor-thin margin in the United States Senate, but that was a phenomenal win, and that was because people got out and voted, and people refused to be intimidated. So, because of that, now there's, I think we'll see some real change in the next 2 years in what the Senate and the House are able to do, given the Democratic majority and having President Biden in office. So, voting matters so much, and I think what we all just lived through in the last 2 months and also, since the pandemic hit, just about, we're at this critical juncture where a lot of issues in our society are really being looked at like they should have been looked at far earlier, but things are being examined in a different way, and we have a moment now more than ever to change things and to focus attention on social justice issues and who has power in our communities, and voting is such a critical step in that process, and I can't state it enough. It does matter. I mean, we just saw what we just came through with, as Pastor Lanier mentioned, January 6th, and how incredible and like nothing any of us had ever seen before, and but thanks to people having the courage and getting out there and voting, we have certain players in office right now who I think we're going to be very positive for this country and our local community. So voting absolutely matters, and we just have to keep banging that drum. And people, change doesn't come overnight, but voting's the first step to get there.
Now, one of the things that that's certainly prevalent in my mind is that we still have to deal with all these issues occurring because people are aggressively making sure that people of color don't participate. I thought we were a lot further in this country until 4 years ago, when our president made it quite clear that we still have an issue with racism. I'm going to ask this of both of you, and I kind of want you to be honest about it because we need everybody to talk about it if we're going to resolve it. But what is the what is your feeling about how people of color and other folks, people who are white folks and people of color working together? What can we do together to assure ourselves that we have these conversations about race and make it a sincere effort to resolve the issue as much as we can? I mean, I know that's a tough question, but I think we have to step in that direction sooner or later, and I think it needs to be sooner rather than later. But please, could you respond to that question?
Yeah, I'll go first. Greg, I come from a basketball family, competitive basketball family. My pops is in the Hall of Fame, Bob Lanier. And so, other than my faith, basketball is like life. And I said that to say is that we really have to commit to being competitive. Evil and greed are always active. They don't sleep, they don't stop. And so they're always scheming, always planning, always manipulating. And what we do too often is get a victory and relax.
Right.
You get a victory, you advance, you get a Civil Rights Act, a Voting Rights Act, advancements in affirmative action. I'm talking about like the 60s now and the 70s. And then we relax and think that that we can do that. But when you think about those people who are doing unjust acts, even if you get a legal victory, it's not like they've gone away. What they've done is they go underground and they continue to scheme. And when we relax, that allows them to take over more territory. And so we can't relax. If we had been as organized and mobilized in 2016 as we were in 2020, then we don't end up with Donald Trump as president. But because of a host of things, including voter manipulation and voter suppression, but also a lower voter turnout, then we ended up with Trump. If we had stayed on the wall, stayed focused, we're continuously organizing around voting, around building relationships, around building coalitions, then we would have been stronger in 2016. And so the challenge of politics is rough. It's considered a zero-sum game. Somebody wins and somebody loses. And so when we win, whoever we is, those on the side of justice, those on the side of greed and evil are trying to take that territory away. And so we've got people of goodwill, but we have to continuously be mobilizing and organizing, recognizing that there are forces that want to take us back to a foregone era.
Well, I think, all of that's true, and I truly, I have those same sentiments, but I want to ask Ms. Foley, I want to be kind of direct. If somebody's going to talk about these issues, I think our white brothers and sisters really have to bring it up, because every time we bring it up, it's like we're playing the race card, and I want to know, how you can help with that, Colleen. I mean, I really do. And I want to, is legal aid financially equipped to help fight some of these issues? And if you could just answer those questions, I would be surely delighted. Thank you.
Yeah, so those are such excellent questions, and I really applaud you asking them, because I think it is well past time for lots of discussions between different people in the society, black and white, and it is an uncomfortable discussion for a lot of people, because race has not ever been adequately addressed in this country. I like to tell my personal story, which is that my 4 grandparents were Irish immigrants, and when they came to this country, they didn't look like other folks. They had heavy duty brogue, and they were not treated well. And I would not be where I am today and my family if we weren't white. So that was an advantage that we had. But my family coming into America 100 or so years ago, experienced, certainly nothing like what African Americans have experienced in this country whatsoever. But my point is, we have so much more in common than we have in terms of differences, and let's have these conversations, and let's stop putting a lid on it, and this country we can't move forward if we don't have these hard discussions about how can we bridge gaps and how can we do better by each other. And so that goes to your initial question. In terms of legal aid, we've been around a long time. We're celebrating our 105th year this year in 2021, which I'm so proud of. And we, in case the audience doesn't know, we provide free civil legal services for qualifying Milwaukee County residents on a host of issues such as housing and housing security and Social Security benefits. And we have some projects right now that are at the periphery of the criminal justice system, involving individuals who are sentenced as teenagers to essentially life in prison without parole, and not surprisingly, disproportionately impacting a lot of low-income youth and youth of color. So thankfully, despite 2020 being such a challenging year for everyone, our donors and the foundations that support us have come through in a big way. And but what's on the horizon for us is, how can we, as a civil public interest law firm, interact better with the criminal justice system, or more creatively, what can we do to move the dial on affordable housing in the city, and to seriously bring down the number of evictions, which, I've said this before, it's a broken system, and the number of evictions that are filed in Milwaukee County Circuit Court is shameful. And we have been engaged. Now there's a Milwaukee Rental Housing Resource Center that is being put into our building here on the first floor that we share with community advocates. And that's, the silver lining of the pandemic has been that we've been engaging in conversations with landlords and their counsel that have never occurred before. And part of that is a recognition that there's been a lot of distress all over the community, and landlords as well, who are trying to get through this, and in some ways have been asked by our government to carry more of a societal load without the funding. There's been some funding. Hopefully there's going to be more from President Biden. But long story short, legal aid is here for the community, and we're focused on a lot of different issues. The eviction crisis in particular has been predominant for us through the pandemic for obvious reasons.
That's beautiful. Thank you. That's close to my heart. You must be trying to win me, because I'm that's something close to my heart. That eviction situation is very close to my heart. We know that that's coming up, and it's going to be horrendous. But Pastor Lanier, I wanted to ask you, how do we make every election important in the minds of voters? I know these are questions that that people have been trying to ask and get answers for a long, long time, but take a shot at it.
I'm a teacher at heart, and so I believe you've got to get into the minds of people that you want to shift behavior and equip them. I don't believe in shaming people into vote. I don't think that works. I understand why people might resist that sometimes, but I really think the voting process has to be understood as an exercise of power. Mm-hmm. And I think when you talk to people about two things, about critical thinking skills, which people like to think they think critically, and about power. If we understood the power dynamics better, what it means to vote, what it means to not vote, what it means for resources when people are looking, when the system is looking where it's going to dispatch resources, and it scans the terrain to see who's voting and who's not voting, and how people that run for election stereotypically will leapfrog over areas that don't vote because they don't participate.
Right.
You understand it as an exercise of power, saying at a minimum, hey, I'm exercising my power. So now I know if it's John Q. Citizen or Jane Q. Citizen or Juanita Q. Citizen, they know something about power because at least they're voting. So I can't run the okie doke, if you will, on them. I got to be attentive to them. And then secondly, in power circles, Minister Lewis, we talk about two things: organized money, organized people. Now, if
Wow.
you got a boatload of money, then you can use money and you can exercise power that way. That's
Well,
not a lot of us. But if we have many people, then you can move some things. Going back to the Evers and Biden's presentations, they don't set their own agendas, really. They do some, but some of the agenda gets set by the people that show up and say, this is what we want on the
right.
table. Me and the 5,000, 10,000 people that are with me. And so that is what we need to understand about elections, and that it occurs over time. So we've got to want to exercise some power over time for ourselves and for our people.
Right. Ms. Foley, I just want to ask you this, before we leave here today. What did you think about the Biden um, uh, talk and the governor's presentation on the other day? What did you think about both those presentations? Did they address some of the issues that we're concerned with right here and now?
Yes, I think, everyone is very, of course, concerned about vaccinations and where that's going. Also about the $1.9 trillion package that President Biden is hopefully will get good results on, and that includes rental assistance funding for tenants and landlords. In particular, Governor Evers' conversation in his budget address contained some wonderful news for the civil legal aid community, and that goes to Pastor Lanier's point about who gets heard and who gets listened to. So in advance of that budget discussion, myself and my peers were in touch with the governor's office about civil legal funding. It goes to a lot of basic human rights. Housing is a human right, among other things, and that it was during the Walker administration, it was really paltry, and we were heard. And again, that goes to, who votes, who gets elected, who gets heard. So, for instance, just to give you some examples, the civil legal aid funding that's been included in his budget is now $4 million over the biennium, where it was previously $1 million.
Mm-hmm.
That's phenomenal. We have to see what the legislature does, but that helps so many individuals in need in our community, just to even the playing field. And then additionally, there's finally discussion about modernizing the unemployment system, which, as we all know, is incredibly antiquated and hurt a lot of people waiting for funds when the bottom fell out and they lost their jobs. And finally, there was a news release or a press release right before I came on today from the governor's office saying that the state senate is going to pay attention to that request from him and call a special session. So those sorts of decisions make real changes in people's day-to-day survival. And so again, if the right folks aren't in office, those conversations, they don't happen. And people like me and my peers who were trying to advance certain issues on behalf of the clients we represent, those conversations wouldn't happen. So voting matters, 150%.
Amen. Amen. I just want to remind everybody we're here talking with Colleen Foley, the executive director of Legal Aid Society, and my good friend, Pastor Walt Lanier, who's also a doctor of law. Sometimes we forget he's such a powerful preacher. We forget that he's a lawyer by trade. He's a lawyer. And we had a good conversation here today. And I just want everybody to know that, souls to the polls, we're not just here just to make, ourselves be seen, getting folks out to vote. We want to talk about advocacy and community and helping folks understand their power and strength. Like Pastor Lanier said, we have power with our vote. We have strength with our numbers, and now we need to put that all together so that we can get resources to make things happen. We'd like to have folks who we want in office to be there so that we can talk to them and possibly make them do things for us, with a decent conversation and not always hollering and screaming. But that's in our future. And we may have some opportunity to have folks who we can surely support in the very near future. But souls to the polls, we thank you so much for your time. We know how busy you are. And I thank you just for coming and sharing with people. And I hope folks understand how important it is to have people like yourselves come and address these situations. And you need to take them very, very serious. Listen to what's going on and put all these things in a play that we can use to advance the development of communities that are really being underserved. That's my wish. That's my prayer, is that we have folks like you support our community and make sure that we support you and your ideas. So I just want to thank you, and I think we're running out of time, and I don't want to take up too much more of your time. I love you. I love you fighting for community, and there's nothing you can do about it. I love you, love you, love you, and I hope you just keep and continue to look out for folks who can't look out for themselves. Thank you so much for sharing your time with us today. Thank you. Bless you.